On the morning of 29 July 1944, amid the shattered hedgerows of Normandy, France, an American Sherman tank rolled cautiously forward under a low, gray sky. The air smelled of cordite and wet earth. Somewhere ahead, German guns waited. Inside that tank were 5 men of the U.S. 3rd Armored Division, veterans of weeks of brutal fighting since D-Day. They had trained for this moment. They had rehearsed every command, every contingency. But none of that training prepared them for what happened next. In a matter of seconds, their tank commander would be wounded, orders would vanish, chaos would take hold, and in that moment when doctrine failed and survival hung by a thread, the responsibility for the crew, the tank, and the mission would fall to the least expected man inside the vehicle, the driver. Little did they know that what happened next would become one of the quiet, undocumented acts of battlefield leadership that defined the human cost and courage of the Second World War. By late July 1944, the Allied campaign in Normandy had reached a breaking point. After nearly 7 weeks of grinding combat in the bocage, dense hedgerow country that favored the defender, the U.S. First Army launched Operation Cobra. Its objective was simple in concept and brutal in execution: break through the German lines west of St. Lo, exploit the breach, and finally bring maneuver warfare back to the Western Front. Inside one of those Shermans was a young Private First Class William Bill Carter, aged 20, from rural Indiana. Carter had been in the Army less than a year. Trained as a tank driver at Fort Knox, he knew engines, gears, and terrain. His world was the narrow slit of a driver's periscope and the constant vibration of steel tracks. He was not trained to command men. He was trained to move the tank where he was told. The tank commander that day was Staff Sergeant Robert H. Lane, a combat veteran who had landed in Normandy on D+4. Calm under fire, Lane had led his crew through multiple engagements against German Panzer IVs, Stug 30 assault guns, and well-camouflaged anti-tank positions. The rest of the crew, gunner, loader, assistant driver, and radio operator, trusted him completely. They would need that trust. At 07:03 hours, Carter's platoon advanced toward a narrow sunken lane bordered by thick hedgerows rising nearly 10 feet high. Visibility was limited to less than 50 yards. German defenders from the Panzerlehr Division, though battered by days of aerial bombardment, still held key choke points with 75mm PaK-40 anti-tank guns and infantry armed with Panzerfausts. By 08:115, sporadic small arms fire crackled across the fields. The tanks moved slowly, deliberately. Every hedge could hide death. At 08:42, the lead Sherman was hit. A sharp crack echoed as an armor-piercing round punched through its side. Flames erupted. The crew bailed out, 2 of them burning. The column halted. Sergeant Lane's tank was ordered forward to cover the withdrawal. Inside the hull, Carter felt the tank lurch as he shifted gears, easing it into position. Sweat dripped into his eyes despite the cool morning. The engine roared. The gun fired once, twice. Then, at 08:51, everything changed. A German anti-tank round struck the turret ring. The impact was deafening. Metal screamed. Shrapnel ricocheted inside the turret. Sergeant Lane was hit. Blood sprayed across the turret interior. Lane slumped against the radio, unconscious. The intercom went silent. The tank was still moving forward. By 08:53, German machine guns opened up from the right flank. Infantry scattered. Another Sherman to their left took a hit and stalled. Smoke filled the lane. Inside the tank, confusion reigned. The gunner shouted for orders. The loader froze, waiting. The assistant driver yelled that they were drifting off the lane. Carter had seconds to act. Doctrine was clear. If the commander was incapacitated, command passed to the gunner. But the gunner was half blinded by smoke and struggling to acquire targets. The radio operator was trying desperately to raise platoon command over static-filled channels. The tank was now exposed. At 08:56, a second German gun fired. The round missed by inches, slamming into the hedgerow behind them. Leaves and dirt rained down onto the hull. Carter realized something terrifying. If they stayed where they were, they would die. Without waiting for orders, Carter made a decision that went against everything drilled into him. He brought the tank to a halt. He keyed the intercom. "I'm taking command," he said. There was no argument, no time. Carter issued his first order. Reverse 5 yards, then pivot left. He used terrain instinctively, angling the hull to present thicker frontal armor. He ordered the gunner to fire into the hedgerow line where muzzle flashes flickered. The gun roared. Leaves exploded outward. Screams followed. By 0902, Carter had maneuvered the tank into partial defilade behind a stone wall. The engine strained. The tank shuddered. German infantry rushed forward with Panzerfausts. Carter ordered canister fire. The blast shredded the advance. Inside the tank, fear was absolute. Smoke choked the air. Sergeant Lane moaned faintly. Blood pooled on the floor plates. For over 20 minutes, Carter fought the tank like a seasoned commander, adjusting position, calling targets, coordinating fire. At 0925, American infantry regrouped behind the Sherman. The lane was held. The crisis was not over, but they were alive. At 0938, platoon command re-established contact. Relief tanks moved up. Medics reached Sergeant Lane. Only then did Carter relinquish control. Lane survived, though he would never return to combat. The German position was overrun by noon. Operation Cobra surged forward. Within days, the Normandy front collapsed. Carter never received a medal. No citation was written. To the Army, he was still just a driver. But every man in that tank remembered who saved them. What happened next became legend, not in books but in memory. The 3rd Armored Division pushed east, fighting through France, Belgium, and into Germany. Casualties mounted. Victories came at a cost. Carter survived the war. He returned home quietly. He never spoke much about Normandy. In after-action reports, his name appears only once, but 8 lives were saved that morning by one man who stepped beyond his role when everything fell apart. In the vast machinery of World War II, this was one tank, one crew, one moment. Yet it stands as a testament to the truth that leadership is not always assigned. It is sometimes taken under fire against impossible odds. This was just one of countless untold stories from the Second World War. Subscribe to WWII Records as we continue to bring these forgotten chapters of history back to life.